Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to tonight's webinar. We're going to go over the basics of Adobe InDesign tonight. Just before we get started, a little bit about me. My name is Libby Schlosser. I am a web designer or UX designer here in Omaha. I primarily work with Adobe XD, but I also use Adobe InDesign quite often for work, as well as different side projects outside of work, like creating invitations or flyers or things like that for friends and family. So tonight we're just gonna go ahead and review some things about InDesign and do a demo of some of the tools inside of it. Tonight, the goal for tonight is to hopefully by the end of the evening, you will have a better understanding of InDesign, when to use it for your specific particular design need, knowledge of InDesign's basic tools, and have the ability to create a layout with text, images, and shapes. Tonight, we're going to go over what is InDesign, what is it used for, when to use it over Adobe's other tools like Photoshop or Illustrator, who uses InDesign, and then we'll get into our demo. So what is InDesign? It's a desktop software that's primarily used to create layouts and page designs. It's mainly used in print media, but it can also be used for different e-publications as well. The main things you might see it used for are newspapers, magazines, posters, books, etc. Some of those items are examples are shown down here at the bottom of the page. It can also be used for interactive PDFs and sometimes resume creation, but ultimately it's mainly used for documents or items that have a lot of text in them. So why InDesign over Photoshop or Illustrator? I don't want to get too granular with it, but Photoshop is a raster image editor, which means it's pixel based, and its primary use is to edit images. You can also It's also used to create different, what are we thinking of? Different digital paintings, because it has an extensive brush library as well. And then Illustrator, it's a vector graphics editor. It's vector based, which means paths. So it's used a lot of times to create logos, iconography, and other imagery that's typically more flat and less three-dimensional. And then there's InDesign, which is a desktop publisher. It's best used for multi-page documents because of its great deal of text and image control. Who uses InDesign? At this point, it's become an industry standard. It was created in 1999, so it's 21 years old, almost 22 years old. It's anyone who, from a smaller company such as your local newspapers or magazine publishers, might use it, all the way up to larger corporations such as National Geographic or Condé Nast, which creates Vogue, Wired, Home and Garden, and many other large magazines that you'll see around. Okay, so that was just a brief overview of InDesign. We're going to dive into our demo and just go over InDesign's basic tools, the different workspaces you can use, the windows and how you can customize it for what you need, just different text and shapes. We're also going to go over master pages and page numbers within those, as well as utilizing some of InDesign's paragraph styles, because they're very, very helpful, adding images and the ability to edit images in other Adobe products, and then the different options for saving and exporting. So feel free to add in questions or anything like that throughout the evening, and I'll do my best to answer them as we go. So for our demo tonight, we're going to create a just a document or sample magazine spread that looks something like this at the end. So to create this, we're just going to use, like I said, InDesign's tools to see how we can create this. Okay, so to get started, we're going to go ahead and create a new document. This is our new document dialog box. Here you have different options. These are all of the recent files you would have created, any saved presets that you have. And then you also have different print, web, and mobile presets for just very common sizes that you might use. And also in each one of these tabs, you'll also have different templates that you can use as a starting point for your particular project. And then on the right-hand side, we have our preset details where you can give your document a name, so a file name. So we'll just call this demo 1217. And then, so you have your width and height. I'm more comfortable working in inches, but it's completely whatever you're comfortable working in for your unit. So you have all these different options, but again, I'm more comfortable in inches, so I tend to switch to that. We're going to work in portrait mode, and I'm going to create a document that has 4 pages just so I can show you what facing pages look like. Facing pages, and like I said, I'm going to leave this checked. Facing pages are what you would typically see in a magazine or a book, where your even pages are always on the right side, or sorry, on the left side, and your even pages are, sorry, your odd pages are on the left, are on the right, and then your even pages are on the left. So page 1 will always be on your right. And then when you open page 1, 2 is on the left and 3 is on the right. So then when those pages are open looking at you, that's the spread. And then when you close them, they're then facing each other. And that's where that name of facing pages comes from. In InDesign, you can also choose what page you want the document to start on. This would be really beneficial for if you're creating a book in InDesign. So books tend to have multiple chapters in them. So you could create a different document for each chapter. So say you started with chapters, this document is for chapter 7, which might be on page 52. You could start on that page and then end up with all of your different files for your different chapters. So it's just a little bit more manageable in terms of file size. I'm going to make this an 8-column, work with 8 columns. Columns are just really great for breaking up text and then just aligning different shapes and images to have that grid. And then your gutter is the space in between the column that just gives things a little bit more breathing room. So if you have a text that runs on 3 columns, the column gutter is the space in between. So that way the columns aren't just completely butt up against each other. Margins are really important when it comes to printing. They're very similar to what you would see in a Word document. And Word documents typically have that 1/2 inch margin. Like I said, they're really important when it comes to printing because most printers don't print full bleed. So they print with about 1/4 inch margin around them. So if you're working on a document and you don't want to have, you don't want your imagery to get cut off, just plan to incorporate the 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch margin in your design. But if you do want your document to go full bleed, you're just going to have to prepare to cut that file size, cut it down to size. So that's where the bleed is really important. So if you give yourself a bleed, that adds in a little bit extra printing. So that way, when you cut it down, your bleed line extends past your crop mark and you can get a really clean edge with the image. You don't run the risk of a thin white line if you mistakenly cut wrong. All right, we're going to go ahead and create our document. So as I said, this is going to be that 4-page document, and in your pages panel, you can see that over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can see those facing pages are as a spread in your document. So this is your pages panel. Your properties panel will be very similar if you're used to Illustrator or Photoshop, where depending on the item you're clicking on, the properties will change. So if you have a shape selected, I'm just going to go ahead and create a basic shape, and you select it, your properties here change. That way you can change the size and appearance right here. What InDesign and other Adobe products used to be were more of this Essentials Classic workspace, where those properties were all along the top. So it's more of what you're comfortable with. I've gotten pretty used to the Essentials Classic or Essentials Regular and just utilizing this properties panel. There's also different workspaces depending on what you're working on. So interactive PDFs, I kind of mentioned those at the beginning. An example of that might be, I've seen them in cookbooks or something, an online that has a table of contents that then links to the different parts of the book or book. So that way that would be considered an interactive PDF because those links make it interactive. And yeah, so just different workspaces depending on what you're working on. And then right next to your properties panel, you have some different windows that you can utilize between your layers, links, swatches. These would be your paragraph and character styles. And then your paragraph and character elements. Those are also typically in your properties panel as well. So you may not need those. But if you are ever missing anything, you can go to your window and find all of your different window options here. So this would be one that isn't within my windows, but it is in my properties, but you can always add it as an option as well. And then now onto the left-hand side is your general toolbar. It's very similar to what you would see in other Adobe products. You have your select and direct select. Those are all really great for, I'll kind of do a quick example of that, but if you have maybe a grouped item, so these two shapes are now grouped, and I did that by going to Object, Group. But so your select tool allows you to change the size, move it around, etc. But your direct select tool will allow you to just move one object around. But it's still, when you go back to your select tool, it's still in a group. It also allows you to grab a specific point and directly select that. So that way you can just move the one point around. Well, if I could get it to work. So go click here. There we go. I'm not sure why it's not working. We'll try it one more time. But yeah, you can just select a single point and adjust it. There we go. And that's something that comes in handy with a direct select if you want a different type of shape versus what the preset shapes that InDesign gives you, which are your ellipse, rectangle, and polygon tool. All right, go ahead and get rid of those. The other tools in InDesign are your type tool. If you click and hold, you can see that you also have some other options here, like the type on the path. And then example of some little tricks about your type tool. I'm just going to fill this with some placeholder text to show you. So type, fill with placeholder text. And we have some content here. So this is where an example of how the properties panel changes depending on what you're selected. So here it's giving me the different character. I can change the font, its font weight, and then also the size, the line height or leading, also the tracking, so the space between the letters, and then a few other options down here that you can play around with. You can also easily turn off all caps and turn on all caps, small caps, and then some other options there. And then within paragraph, you have your general alignment, left alignment, right alignment, center, and justifications. Down below is where InDesign really comes in handy with being able to do full paragraph indents or just first line indents or last line indents, and then just some other functionalities that we can dive into later. So just as I said at the beginning, you get a ton of different text options in InDesign to create the layout that you're wanting. The last thing on the text before we move on is every box or shape that you create in InDesign is actually a text box, but it's also a shape. So an example of that is we have a text box and we just have a filled color shape. If I select this and my plan is to change the color of the text to this blue. If I do that, it only changes the background fill color of the shape. So I undid that. To change the color of the text, you actually have to highlight it. So if you're ever struggling with why is my text not changing color and the background's changing, that's why. You have to make sure you highlight everything and then go in and change it that way. Go ahead and get rid of that. And then just the last couple of items I went over, your general shape tools. In InDesign, you also have a frame tool, which I like to utilize for laying out like rough wireframes or rough styles of a document. So you kind of get those here. And kind of the same thing, you can fill them, but they're really just frames and you can go in and place images or text in them later. And the rest of the tools are mainly things that you would utilize in other Adobe products like your eyedropper, magnifying glass, etc. So now I'm going to go ahead and get started with creating that spread that I showed you at the beginning. It has 4 images and some text. And I'm just going to go in and show you how I would lay it out. Okay, so we have our spread here. The first thing that I want to do is I want to set up my master pages and add page numbers. So to do that, I have my A master up here and I double click on it to get focused on that master. So we no longer have all of our pages visible like we would normally would. We're only focused on that master. The next thing that I am going to do is use my pen tool just to create a line down here. And then I'm just going to fill it in with a light gray. And then next, I'm going to create a text box down at the bottom below the line. And like I said, I want to add page numbers. So to add a page number, you go to Type, Insert Special Character, Markers, and Current Page Number. And then I'll input an A because you're on a master at this point and you're not actually on a page with a page number. So then I'm just going to give this document a name or our publication a name. And I'm just going to change the font a little bit, just super quick. And so there we go. We have that first side of our footer. The next, so I'm just gonna, a little trick I have for how the text box doesn't fit snugly around the text. If you double click on a corner, it'll just tighten up right all around the text. So that way you don't have to worry about the text box hanging over. So I'm gonna drag and I'm going to select both objects and then I'm going to edit, copy, and edit, paste because I want the same element on the other page as well. So to make sure that they're even, I have something on called Smart Guides in my InDesign document. So you can see as I'm dragging that a little green line shows up. And so that indicates that it's in line with that other document. And so I can also see that it's centered because of that pink line. Here we go. And then I want to turn on those smart guides. You would go to grids and guides, and then you can see this smart guide item here. And then I want the page number to be right aligned here. So I'm just going to use our alignment tool. So I've selected both of them, and then I'm going to align it, and that shifts it over to the right side. And then I want that page number also to be on that right side as well. So I'm just going to go up and go to edit, cut, and then edit, paste, and just grab this as well. So cut and paste. And then I'm also going to right align them. So now we have our footer in our master pages. So if I go back to the page, I can then see that I have page 1, 2, and 3, and then 4 is down here. You can also have multiple master pages. So if this was a cover, I could go up to our More menu up here and say New Master, and then we'll just call it Master B, and I only want it to be 1 page. And then I'll just quickly add some text here. And we'll go ahead and center it and make sure it's centered on the page just to show what we've got going on here. And so if I go in and say I want that B master to be here, I can click on that page and apply master to pages and then select the B master. And so now that B master is there. The last thing I want to show you with the master pages is, I'm going to go here. If we create a shape and it's filled in down here, master pages are always going to be on the bottom. So in terms of layers, the master elements are always the last thing, unless you change it, and you can. So I'm going to go back to my master items, and I'm going to add a new layer. So that puts layer 2 above the blue layer 1. And I'm just going to drag these items up there. So now they're in layer 2. So if I go back to that page, those items are on top. So that way anything that I create later on that's in layer 1 will always be below our master items. Okay. Now we'll go ahead and I want to add the frames for those images. So that way we can easily place them. To do that, I just grab the frame tool. And then I'm just going to click and drag from about halfway. So that's 1 frame. And then I'm going to do another one right here. And just quickly do this, and I can always adjust it later if I need to. There we go. So that was, and then, so since that's all laid out, I'm going to quickly add in those images. To add images, I'm just going to, and I'm going to do it all at one time. So File, Place, and then I already have an image, a folder set up with the images I want to use. So I'm just going to select all of them using my Command key. So it selects all of them. And then it kind of does that preview for me. So I would know that I want this picture in this frame. So go ahead and select it. And same thing with this frame. And then here. So my frames that I created are much smaller than the actual image sizes. So if I clicked on that circle right here, you can see this orange line. is actually the image. So it's much, much larger than the frame I had. There's a few things that we can do to adjust that. We can use our frame fitting tools down here. So there's just some simple icons and hovers that show you what they are. You can also get to those by going to Object Fitting, and then it gives you all those same options. So we're just going to quickly run through those. So this one's fit frame proportionally. So if I click that, so it fills the entire frame with the image, but some of the image is cut off because it didn't distort it. So it does it in proportion. So this is kind of the opposite. So it fits the frame, the whole image in the frame. So it may not be entirely covered. And then these are the ones that kind of distort the image because it's forcing the image to fit in that frame. And then this one will fit frame to content, so it makes the frame larger. And this one centers it. And then this one is my favorite, which is content aware. So it decides kind of for you what it wants to show. So I'm just going to go ahead and select all three of these using my Shift key. And I'm just going to say fit content aware on all of them. It needs a couple of seconds. So there we go. So it did a pretty good job. I'm just going to grab that center and I can move them around as I see fit. And then I'm going to zoom in on this one just a little bit. There we go. So now our images are all placed. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to get ready to add in our text by adding some text boxes. So I'm just going to align the text box with the our columns here. This one's a little off. There we go. And then I have the text all ready to go in a document. So we're just going to go ahead and I'm just going to copy it. There we go. And so going back to our demo, you can see that it's in 3 columns and then this is in 1. Now you might think that in order to accomplish this, you need to create multiple text boxes, but that's not true. I would have done it the same way prior and created like 3 or 4 different text boxes to achieve this effect, but you can do it all in one effect, in one text box. And I'll show you how. So we'll go ahead and we'll click on our frame, our text frame, and go to Object, Text Frame Options. And here you can add the columns. And so I know I want 3 columns, and so it fits there proportionally, fits there correctly. And then just while we're here, I'm going to add some spacing because I have the text box lined up against that image. And so I'm just going to give it a little bit of space above the top, so about 1/4 inch. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to do is in my document, this text is all in 1 column instead of 3. And again, you don't need to use 3 multiple text boxes to achieve that. So I'll just go ahead and highlight this section. And then we can go to our paragraph box window. And in the More menu, you can go to Span Columns. And that allows you an option to span all. Or if you only want to do 2, 3, etc. So this one's span all. So now it's all the way across. Perfect. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up some paragraph styles. The first one that I'm going to start with is setting up our headlines. So both of these I want to be 48 points in size. And I want them to be all caps. I want them to be tracked out to 100. All right, that looks pretty good. And then I'm just going to highlight the dreaming and change that font. Oops, got a little scroll happy. And then so in our font menu, you can do a lot of cool things with that. I already have some at the top that are ones I've used previously, but in the filter section, you can go by different classifications. So if you want to find something that is more script, you can click here, or slab serif, regular serifs, etc. So this is something really nice. Go ahead and click there. And I do want it to be light and centered. So that is going to be our first paragraph style. As soon as I change the text color, I want it to be this like a brownie orange. All right. So I just grabbed my eyedropper and pulled it from an image. I like to utilize the color schemes and images quite a bit. So now we have this dreaming that is the right size, font, etc., and color. And so I'm just going to make a new paragraph style by clicking this plus at the bottom and name it. So it's going to be headline serif. And yeah, that's all I want to do there. And then so I'll just change this to be a different font. So open your next, ultralight, and then I want this to be centered. And then I can go ahead and add my paragraph style here. There's a couple of things that I want to add to this paragraph style though. So this will be headline sans serif. But I want to add a rule line. So a rule line is a bar that goes below or above the text. So we can turn that on for paragraph rule. I want it to be 2 points. And then I do want it to be that orange color, but I forgot to add it as a swatch. So I'll have to go back and do that. But first we'll just format this. So I want it to be the width of the text, and you can see it changing back here. And then I do want it to be indented just a little bit. And then offset below also a little bit. Okay. So once I get that color in, I can do a better job of showing what it's supposed to look like. So to add a swatch, I have this highlighted here. So it's picking up the color, and you can see that by it showing up down here. And then I just add plus, and now it's a swatch added to my library. And once that's added, I can go back to my paragraph and edit it, and then go to that paragraph rules and change the color. And there we go. And the last thing we're going to do with that little headline at the top is format this quote. So I want it to be centered. I want it to be the serif font, and then just a little bit larger. And I'm just eyeballing a lot of this. And when this part of it, I want it each side to indent a little bit. So about 1/4 of an inch on each side. So I just clicked and added the left indent and the right indent. And then I want a little bit of space before and after here. So this adds in some space below the of Italy and then below the quote when I do this guy right here. I do want it to be a smidge smaller. Here we go. All right. So that is the styling here. And then the last thing that we're going to do for this text is we're just going to create a general body copy. So to do that, we're just going to grab the Avenir Next regular. I am going to change it to be about a 10-point font. And then, yeah, that looks about right. .10 font, and then I just do the auto and then just increase it a little bit. Perfect. Okay, and then I'm just going to add that as a paragraph style as well and just call it body. So it's a little rough, but it looks pretty good. We're just going to add in there's one edit I want to make to this paragraph style. And so one thing to note, you can see that there's a plus right here. And so when that happens, it means that there's overrides. So if I clear the overrides, the plus goes away. So I right click and then I want to edit and say, you can tell the paragraph style what style will always come next after it. So here, the next style is that headline sans serif with that rule line. And I know that I want to use that in the future. So we'll just add that in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in our next text box and then go back to our document and just grab another set and then copy and paste. And like I said, I want to use that headline again, and I can easily do that here by going to, if I right click on this headline it'd be the headline serif and say apply headline serif, then next style. Shoot. I don't know where it went. Probably too small. There we go. You can see that it applied just like it is here and then applied that next style as it should. So that's just something that's really, really helpful to see. So I'm just going to undo that really quick because there's one small change because I want this to be smaller. So to do that, I'm just going to duplicate these by right clicking and make them smaller. Shoot. We'll just leave it as copy for right now. And then if I click in here, I know I want the sans serif to be 18-point font, and I want the serif to be 27-point font. And I can go in and say, because it's just a copy, I can do that same thing and say headline copy and then apply those next styles. So it did the same thing, it's just a little bit smaller. And that looks pretty good. And that's the benefit of those character styles is that you can quickly, very, very quickly go in and say, I want this to go here and I want this to go there. And it's just a couple of clicks of a button. We're going to do that same thing one more time. And I'm just going to do a couple of things to this Florence header. And I'm just going to quickly style it. All caps, 100% track. And then here I want to change the color, and then I want to add in a page number. To do that, to add a page number, you go to type, or sorry, not a page number, but a numbered list, and apply numbers. And here I'm just, okay, perfect. And then I'm just going to create this as another paragraph style. There it is. And we'll say numbered list. And here I know that I always want the body copy to come right after it. So we'll just set that up there. And then the other thing that I want to do here is I'm going to add in some indents. So I'm going to add a little bit of space before. just to give it some more room. And then just in this one instance, I'm going to add some more space before. Okay, so now if I click here, well, actually, we're just going to create the body here. But if I go down to this one and highlight the Venice, and then there's a return and then a paragraph, I can go in and say numbered list and then apply next style. Oops, did I not? And then it's all set up, except for the number. Not everything works out the first time, does it? So we can go and say apply numbers and then numbered list. And then you can see that this is 1 and 1. But if I said to start at previous number, you can see that it changes there. So it's referencing that 1 up there. We just might need to remove this guy. Perfect. All right, second time's a charm. Go ahead and change that. Right click. There we go. That time it worked out. And we'll do that one more time. Right click, apply numbered list to the next style. So like I said, just a few clicks of a button and we have that all laid out. All right, that's looking pretty good. Back in the demo that I had here, you can see that this has a background color, and you might think that you have to have a shape behind it to have that background color, but it's actually just all one text box. To achieve that, sorry, my Zoom stuff keeps getting in the way, so I keep adjusting. So I'll click on the text box, and then I'm just going to change that background color here, and then I just will use that same color, but I'll give it a tint of about 25. 20. So it's just using a hue of that color. Perfect. And then we can go back up to our object because we're clicking on that and say text frame options. And then this is where we're going to use those indents again. So I'm going to give it some space at the top and then some left and right spacing. I'm going to do just a little less than that. Here we go. And then I'm just going to make it a little bit wider. So that way it all fits. And shift this guy over. And it's almost perfect, but I do, just me being nitpicky, I'm going to add some more space to the top. All right, so that looks pretty good. So we can see a little preview here of what it looks like. To do that, I'm just clicking the W on my keyboard to go back and forth between here to show it in preview and normal mode. To do that, just with here, you can click view and then go to screen mode. And you can, by clicking W, you can toggle between normal and preview. So like I said, that was looking pretty good. There's not really anything that I want to change about it right now. And then to look at what the demo I did before, it's really similar. So, you know, there's a little bit of overhang on this text, this image, you know, just those minor things that you can look at. Yes, I am very nitpicky. So yeah, so like I said, that looks really good. The last thing that a couple of smaller things that I want to show you, or things that you can do, is because I place these images in here, you can go in and edit them in Photoshop if you wanted to. So say I wanted all of these images to then be black and white. I could go up to the links and they're just linked in here to that folder I had them in and say edit with, and I can say edit with Photoshop. So it opens, and then I want to, like I said, I want to change it to be black and white. And so there we go, black and white, click save. And we go back over here and it's already a black and white image because they're linked together. Now, say I wanted to save this as do the same thing. And there we go. But I want to save this as a different name, so I'm not overwriting that image. You can do that, and then there we go. So we can say relink, and it's going back to that folder. And because that folder, Venice Canal 2, is saved in there, I can open it, and then it will be right there. So it can just update automatically there too. And then we can edit that in Photoshop as well. So just some little tips and tricks that you can do. And then again, I want this Venice Canal 2 to be in color. And then double click here. There we go. And it's all updated. So just different Adobe things. You can do the same thing in Illustrator as well if you wanted to edit something in Illustrator. All right. So the last thing that we're going to go over is I want to show you the different saving and export options. To do that, you'll go to File. You have the Save As. And under Save As, you have the document, and then there's also this InDesign CS4 or later, also known as a markup file. So that's so the markup file is something that if you're sharing a document with somebody else, to be able to edit it, if they have a different InDesign software or version than you do, they may not be able to open it and use your document at all. So this InDesign CS4 or later will allow them to still be able to work in it if you give them this file type. The other thing I'm going to show you is the export options. You have multiple export options here for Adobe, for PDFs, print and interactive, EPS, HTML, the markup file that I was talking about, JPEG, etc. I'll quickly show you the PDF print options here. The ones I focus on are typically the marks and bleed, so you can add the different printer marks, so crop and bleed. And then general, I only want to do a range here, so I only want to export that pages 2 and 3. So we'll go to export. So if I go ahead and open that, you can see here that this is your crop mark, and next to it is this is your crop mark, and the next to it is your bleed mark. So that way when you cut it down, you're going to cut here, and you're going to get a really crisp, clean edge on your image. And the last export option that I'm going to show you is the package. Packaging is also pretty important if you want to share your file with somebody else. So what this does is it packages all in one folder your fonts, your links and images, the colors, etc., into one folder. So it's named this. Go ahead and click save, and it's all here. So it copies the fonts, it copies your links, graphics, and everything else. And then it includes that markup file and a PDF of it. So go ahead and package. And then you can see all of those items in here. So this is our folder. And then you have the markup file, your InDesign file, the PDF, the fonts used, and then the links used as well. So that's saving and packaging. That's the main things that I wanted to review with InDesign. We kind of went over master pages, how to import images, different text options, especially with paragraph styles, etc. So if there's any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Otherwise, that's all I have. And thank you guys so much for joining. There are some other resources that you can do through Adobe. They have great help tutorials. You can request a mentor. You can also utilize Omaha Public Library's Lynda subscription. So just different things like that if you are more interested in InDesign. Thank you guys.